But in all honesty, uh, this is for me as a person, as a person who have always been kind of law obedient person. That sounds crazy. I must tell you, absolutely crazy, and especially this criminal case for spreading out of the false information of Russian army. So you know, this is kind of a badge of honor. That what I keep telling, like for many other people, because that's a good that's a good sign for people today to be sentenced for the spreading what they call the false information of Russian army. Because we were trying, and I was always trying to tell the truth about what's going on in my native Ukraine, what Russian army is doing there, how they, the about the criminal, the military crimes perpetrated by Russian soldiers, and that's what they call the false information about Russian army. So that's why I would definitely continue, doing the same, and nothing would prevent me from doing that, even this warrant or even the sentence. So, and actually, a couple of days later, I found myself in good company because Senator Lindsey Graham the, and Commander in Chief of Ukrainian army Zaluzhny were were arrested in absentia and actually announced as wanted. So, and I always, I was trying to make a very simple joke that they don't need to look for the commander in chief of Russia of Ukrainian army. He will find them. That- What's going on? So but that's a lie. An irony of life also is in the fact that this news came to me in Cannes while I've been to Cannes Film Festival. I never visited any festival after the full-scale invasion started in the February of 22. I skipped all the festivals, including Cannes, Berlin, Toronto, Venice, everything where it was going for years. That was the very first time when I went to because I'm trying to work. And I went to Cannes to meet the people, to see the movies, to speak, to create the alliances as always. And like on the second or third day of the festival, this news came up, and practically in 2 days I was responding to all the questions around of all my international colleagues and friends, asking what's going to happen, what is going to be. Nothing. We will continue to work. So it means these guys don't want me to come back to Russia, and they will definitely try to arrest me, in any country that has a specific, treaties, legal arrangements with Russian Federation. So for me, it's important not to travel to that countries. That's what I understand.
Yeah, and I'm curious how much work your team and research that you guys are doing to identify these not only countries but also acquaintances, companies that are more in line with the regime in Russia. Um how do you prepare for the next year, the next 2 years, where who knows where your projects will take you? Who knows which countries you're flying over?
Yeah.
I've always been curious how someone who, because Russia is one of the most influential countries in the world. There are African countries, Asian countries, countries in South America that are very comfortable with Putin's regime. Have you given any thought to a third party helping Russia to achieve some of these arrest warrants?
Well, not yet. Seriously, I will definitely speak with the lawyers. And I will definitely check always with lawyers to certain countries. For example, we have the projects to be shot in Kazakhstan, which is a very good country. And I know that most of the people living in Kazakhstan don't support Russian aggression. And why, once I'm very active socially, I may have my social accounts on both Instagram and Telegram, actively discussing the war every single day. I see how many people from Kazakhstan support my point of view and support Ukrainians. But I need to check whether, the government of this country would be following these certain lines, whether they are able to, to get the people wanted in Russia, arrest them, and extradite to Russia. So I would definitely check it with international lawyers I'm working with. This is only the way. And you are right. There are plenty of African countries and some Asian countries that are trying, know, to find the common language, let's say, with Russia at the moment. I don't think it's easy to do because my criminal case doesn't have a similar ones in the legislations, in the criminal codes of most of the countries in the world. Basically, it works when there is a similar crimes in the country. For example, the fraud, or I don't know, robbery or murder, assassination, whatever. If if it's about to be prosecuted in any country, so people who are wanted internationally, they're supposed to be taken and extradited. But when you are, you know, sentenced for spreading the false information on Russian army, can you imagine that criminal case in Kazakhstan or even in Uganda, let's say, or Burundi, even South Africa actually announced that they would respect the warrant, to arrest President Putin if he
Yes.
comes. With all the political games they have with Russia, they would respect the international law. And that's important. That's why I'm quite optimistic about the prospects in the future, but I will definitely check it with the lawyers.
Mhm. And you just mentioned being an InoAgent. When we hear, at least in the West, when we hear arrest warrants like this, it's hard to understand how much of it is symbolic and how much of it is real. And where I'm coming from is that although you don't live in Russia, your company is based in Russia. Uh, uh, 3 years ago, I think in April of 2020, your company Nonstop Production was excluded from the official register of the Russian State
Mm.
Cinema Committee, which essentially means you've not been able to, and you will not be able to get funding for anything that you're doing there. So,
Yeah, I'm not able to get funding in Russia for a long time. So this is not about me not being able to be funded in Russia. I don't work anymore in Russia. I don't have a chance to work in Russia, and I don't see any reason to work in Russia. Russia is at the moment is not the place to produce the independent movies. That could be relatable to the political and social developments in that country. That's not possible. In fact, would be only possible in exile outside of Russia. So to be the foreign agent means for Russian government why they do that. They want to actually discredit you with your potential audience. So I have more than, let's say, 500,000 of subscribers, and 2 million people read what I'm writing every single. Definitely, that's not so huge as some, let's say, glamorous socialites have. But this is a very important segment of the society. Most of the, well-educated people, hipsters, journalists, filmmakers, actors, whoever, who used to read my, posts before. I was writing only about movies and TV shows, never anything else. And I just started 24th of February of 22 to write about the war. And I do it like every single day. And I rarely, mention any movie. Sometimes in relation to the war, but generally just about the war. So basically, what the Russian government tries to do, they want to say, you know, to my audience, to all other people who are not subscribed but come to read, they want to say, hey, this guy is working for international money. He's bribed by Americans or whoever, they say, and he's not a person to be trusted. That's what they're trying to do. So basically, they announced at least 200 most important, journalists, writers, and political and politically and socially important personalities as a foreign agents, only with the reason to blame them and to get, the audience aware of these people being, sent on the mission to Russia to spread the false information on the army and Russian life, Russian politics, and everything else. So basically, it's not such a huge problem when you're a foreign agent. You should be very transparent. They make you um, actually write financial reports, pretty complicated, every 3 months. They try to control all your activities, and that's really bad, especially for people who live in Russia. I don't. That's why they can call me whatever they like. I'm not a person to follow the rules, regulations, or whatever they would demand next day, because they are very flexible and inventive, and they're coming up always with the new ideas. What should be introduced to the market to actually repress more and more people. And most important, the last but not the least, this is all about intimidation of people who live in the country. This is not about just me or Ivan Verify mentioned or some other guys. This is about any single individual who feels that what's going on in the country is not right. And they feel, there's a necessity to protest. And for them, it is a clear case. You see what it's done to the people who are quite known, who were very successful in the country. Because that's not just about me. I must tell you, the most important, singers, the most popular, the people beloved by hundreds of millions of people, speaking Russian in the world, they are announced they are called foreign legends. The most important stand-up comedians, they are called as a foreign legends. So basically, these guys lost approximately 20% of all celebrities who they were proud of and who were a part of the most popular, you know, showmen and showwomen in this country. 20% of them called the foreign legend. Can you imagine that? Not all of them, of course, are about to be arrested in absentia, but some of them will, for sure.
Um, Now let's talk about Ukraine, the film industry in Ukraine, which obviously in the country they have other things to focus on in the moment. Aside, and a film industry is certainly not the top priority. But hopefully, on the other side of this, as someone who works in the Russian language but doesn't live in Russia, you were born in Ukraine, you went to film school in Ukraine, your parents, grandparents have a illustrious history in Ukraine's film industry. What is your hope for a sort of a Ukrainian film industry that's independent from Russia, that's independent from the Russian economy on the other side of this war?
Well, first of all, Ukrainian cinema has a tradition, long tradition. There were, plenty of amazing filmmakers worked for years. And many, and the whole world knows the names of Devchenko or Parajanov. Both of them were, Ukrainian filmmakers. Definitely, in the last years, the newest history of Ukraine, independent Ukraine, is not the best for Ukrainian cinema because of the economic problems, because of certain challenges this country faced with. I'm sure, you know, Ukraine has the major advantage of Ukraine is its people. It's a very open-minded, very young, very ambitious crowd of people coming. At the moment, most of them are fighting. Most of them are in the army. They are getting this kind of unique experience of going through the war, fighting for the right. Actually, that's very important. That's what happened in the World War II when the generations who came to fight against Nazis and fascists actually they came back, and many of them who become filmmakers, they introduced the new type of the cinema to the audience. Basically, what we call outdoor cinema was born after the war because of the people, who got through this war and who brought back their unique experience. So what I really believe, I believe in the new generation of Ukrainian filmmakers who will come back after the war, definitely face all the challenges this bloody war brings. I mean, the post-traumatic syndromes, everything, because unfortunately, this is unavoidable. But these people, you know, would have something to tell. The film school in Ukraine is pretty strong. Actually, I've graduated from there and many great filmmakers before me. So I believe that these people having something in their hearts and minds to tell, being very much equipped by the profession given by film schools, would be able to tell the new stories to the world. That's important, actually. That's what I believe in. And the great news about Ukraine, which is a major challenge at the same time. This is the very much Ukrainian cinema is very much about the new generation. Russian cinema is as any other industry is diversified by generations and people of different you know tastes and different preferences, whatever it is. Ukrainian filmmakers, that was about the young people. That's why if you look at the television landscape of Ukraine, you will see a lot more young faces than in any other country. The same is going to happen with cinema, and this is but with today with the difference. These guys will be experienced with the war, with such a disaster that happened to the country. And I don't mean necessarily as the soldiers, but the people who work down on the factories. I know a lot of great looking girls, the daughters of my friends, who were trying to explore the careers of actresses. And I asked one of my friends recently, "Where is your nice daughter?" And she said, "She works with her friends as volunteer." I said, "Is she doing?" She's actually working, she's constructing houses in the Kharkiv region because there was everything bombed and ruined.
Mm,
And the group of guys, like sons, like 20 years old, 18 years old people, they came together and no one assigned them, no one sent them. They went to other, region and they helped the people to actually rebuild their houses. That's what they do
mm,
every single day. Is
mm.
it not an experience to tell the story? It is. And definitely, I believe in the future of Ukrainian cinema after the war. And that is exactly where I see my personal I would say, mission, I should help them because I am much more experienced. I would definitely be able to, put together, the projects and to guide them, to walk them through the challenges of the industry. Even now, during the war, I produced 2 movies with the Ukrainian filmmakers. I don't do the Russian speaking movies anymore. I don't think it's a good idea during the war, unless this is a very special movie that would tell the honest story about what is really going on in Russia. But now we're doing the Ukrainian movies, and that's what I am trying to do. I will be trying to do in the future as well.
And one of those Russian films that sort of has a sort of special relevance to the moment is Mama, I'm Home. In 2 weeks,
Yes.
you're coming to Canada for the first time to talk about this film, as well as just the general work that you do. It's a story of a Russian woman who is told that her son has been killed fighting in Syria. She refuses to believe it and she goes searching for him. Now, it was released in September of 2021, but you're bringing it sort of to the American market. And there was a trailer for it that was released a couple months ago that ended in a way that feels like it updated the film. The trailer ended with two men talking about this woman and her son. And one man asks, what's the matter with her son? And the other said, he died in the war. And then he responds, which war? Which is,
What word? Yes, which
yeah,
word?
yeah, which is
Yeah.
obviously a direct commentary on at least the first half of the last year in terms of the Russian invasion, where you couldn't even say that there was a war that was happening. Anyways, I guess my question quickly here, because I know I can't keep you for too long. Um, how has the meanings and the view and appreciation of this film changed since, you know, producing and overlooking it 3 years ago to and now looking at the same film through the lens of what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, I must say that Mama Mo is probably the most unique film that I've ever been part of, in a sense that nothing else predicted the future of Russia quite so accurately as this film did. So uh, definitely, this is not the only film. I can mention, for example, if you want to know something about modern Russia, if you want to understand modern Russia and what governs it, I would rather recommend you to watch my favorite, Andrey Zvyagintsev Loveless, because Andrei managed to capture the essence of the country that no one did, the state of soul, the state of lovelessness, something that made everything possible that was going on. But Mama I'm Home, actually, in all, in every sense of the word, told us about the future 2 years in advance. 2 years in advance. So when we were making this film, the use of private military companies was rather very limited. It was in some countries in Africa where, let's say, notoriously new private military company Wagner was active. But now, because the war in Ukraine, every town, every city, and every village in our country has seen stories similar to what we told in the film. So I I remember myself first months of the war. I spoke. I was speaking with the director, with Vladimir Bitokov, very good young director, who was and is one of the students of Aleksandr Sokurov in a very well-known workshop he created in the North Caucasian city of Nalchi. The same workshop where the great filmmakers, young filmmakers, are coming from. I worked with Kantemir Balagov. and Kira Kovalevich and Vladimir Bitokov is coming from the same industry. And I was um, in the first months of the war, I was sending him links to the news articles, or many ones who dealt with these stories of relatives, bereaved relatives, fighting for the money. But I stopped at some point. There were just too many of them. So uh, father suing or even murdering their ex-wife for the compensation for the deaths of their children. What was rare now is commonplace. That what happened when we were when I was brought this screenplay. It's one of the very few cases in my life when we never developed the script from the scratch. Usually that's what we do. But we were brought this screenplay by a friend of mine who was teaching in the film school in Moscow in Kyiv. And this is the screenplay written by the students. That was her diploma. She's very smart, young woman with a certain experience of working in the financial sector. She was a banker. And then she, stopped, gave up all the activities in the bank and decided to follow her dream. So basically, she wrote this story. And when she brought it to me, that was very unique. I loved it. I said, wow, I never read anything like nowadays. This story, you can read like adaptation of many articles published in a major publication. So, and that was what was important for me as well. Very important factor. We wanted to tell a story about this strong woman who fights for her son, even though she knows in her heart that he's dead. She still fights for him, and this is not how it actually played out in real life, as we all know today.
Mm.
I was all absolutely shocked. Here, one of the Russian most notable human rights activists recently saying that the war in Ukraine was different from any other war that Russia fought in the past decades because attention, it was the first conflict where Russians mothers were silent, where where they didn't protest, they didn't try to save their children, they didn't try to find their bodies. Unlike both Chechen wars, both Chechen wars, the Russian mothers of today are mostly silent. Still, because during the Chechen wars, that was the major fights, and everyone was following them. They were so brave, so courageous, so amazing. And we had so much sympathy towards them, so much empathy. And now they're silent. And this story, I mean, the movie, it, works rather as still as a unique one. Although the stories like that are very well known, have become the commonplace. But the behavior of the lead character who's fighting, it's still unique.
Incredible, incredible. And I would add, you mentioned Loveless earlier by Andrey. I would also add Leviathan in terms of
Yeah.
giving you a tremendous insight into the Russian psyche. And this is something that's almost 10 years old now, but it's still incredibly relevant. Thank you again so much for joining me today, Alexander. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you in Toronto.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.